Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the verbatim federal courtroom testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs trial. As reported by Inner City Press. Imagine a tense courtroom. The trial of music mogul Sean Diddy Combs is underway. Suddenly, the doors open. It's Jim Carrey, but this isn't the funny man we all know. He's somber, serious, with no hint of his famous smile. The entire room, including reporters who weren't expecting him, falls silent. Carrey, known for his wild humor and expressive characters, wasn't there to make anyone laugh. He was there, it seemed, to unburden his soul. What he allegedly said next was not just shocking, it was deeply troubling. He spoke of things that made him tremble, things he claimed he did to achieve success, not just through talent, but by following orders. And the man he said was behind it all? Sean Diddy Combs. With a shaky voice, Carrey reportedly described strange candlelit events, chilling ice baths, and powerful Hollywood figures who allegedly watched as he was brought into the fold. This wasn't just testimony. It felt like someone cleansing themselves of a heavy secret, and it changed the atmosphere of the entire trial. No cameras were ready for this. No journalist had a spot saved for this story. But when Jim Carrey walked in that day, everything stopped. The usually vibrant comedian looked like a shadow of himself, dressed in a dark coat, sunglasses, and an expression so empty it unsettled even veteran reporters. He wasn't joking. He looked like a man on a terrifying mission. The courtroom, already on edge due to Diddy's trial, became completely still. Even the judge paused. A whisper went from a bailiff to the prosecutor. Jim Carrey is here to testify. It hit the room like a bombshell. Nobody saw this coming. Carrey clutched a folder, holding it tight like a secret he'd guarded for years. He walked slowly, deliberately. Diddy reportedly turned and stared, his expression shifting from confusion to perhaps recognition, or even fear, as Carrey neared the witness stand. "I'm not seeking revenge," Carrey said quietly, taking off his sunglasses. "I'm here to finally say what I've kept locked away." He was sworn in, took a deep breath, and sat. For a moment, the courtroom wasn't focused on lawyers or scheduled witnesses. All attention was on the man who made the world laugh, now ready to reveal what lay behind the laughter. What came next was stunning. "I've done things. I can barely speak about them without my voice breaking," Carrey whispered, implicating Sean Combs as the central figure. You could feel the shock in the room. People were stunned. One juror reportedly looked away. Carrey gripped the stand, saying, "What I witnessed, what I was told to do, what I agreed to, thinking it was the price of success. It still haunts me." The judge urged him to continue. What Jim Carrey reportedly said next would make headlines. But in that moment, it was just a man, trembling, finally breaking a silence he'd held for decades. The tension was unbearable. No one made a sound. Jim Carrey, pale and shaking but with a steady voice, was about to reveal a side of Hollywood many feared existed. "I was funny," he said, "but they told me that wasn't enough." He took the court back to the late 80s and early 90s. He was a struggling comedian in Los Angeles, desperate for a break, doing any kind of comedy to get noticed. "I just wanted to make it," he said, "and I was told certain people could make that happen." Carrey explained it started with invitations to private parties delivered by go-betweens. He described being invited to a lavish Hollywood Hills home owned by someone influential, someone he later identified as Sean Combs, then newer to the music scene but known for his connections in music and film. Then the offers started. Carrey claimed he was told that to be truly seen, he needed to attend specific gatherings, meet particular people, and if asked, play along. "At first, I thought it was just networking, normal industry stuff," Carrey stated. But then it was made clear. If I wanted access to big auditions, I had to go through Diddy. His voice cracked slightly. And I did. I went through him. The courtroom remained silent. Carrey recalled a call from a manager he badly wanted to work with. A huge role was coming up. The manager apparently said Carrey was funny, but others were ahead, unless he made a connection. That connection, Carrey alleged, led to an encounter with Diddy that wasn't a typical meeting. Then he dropped a bombshell. "I took a bath with Sean Combs to get a role." The words stunned everyone. Even the court stenographer reportedly flinched. Carrey described being taken to a luxury suite where Diddy waited. He detailed the unsettling scene: dim lighting, candles, and a bathtub already filled. "I was told it was a cleansing ritual," Carrey explained, "that to be taken seriously, I had to be willing to shed my old self." Staring down, Carrey admitted, "It was humiliating, but I did it. I thought that's what it took." The judge allowed the testimony, seeing its relevance to a potential pattern of coercion. Carrey clarified no direct threats were made, but the pressure was immense. It wasn't "do this or else." It was "do this, or you'll be forgotten." "I felt like this was the only way in, and Sean Combs held the key." He paused, then delivered a chilling line. "Hollywood didn't just break me. Diddy owned me." By now, even the most hardened people in the courtroom were visibly uncomfortable. Nobody expected this global comedy icon to share such a deeply unsettling story. But Carrey's tone was unwavering, his details specific. There was no mistaking his meaning. Jim explained that after being brought to the suite, he was asked to undress and get into the bathtub where Diddy was already waiting. Diddy allegedly smiled, saying, "This is how the great are born. You leave your old self in the water." Carrey hesitated, clearly uneasy. But he said the people around him, assistants, industry contacts, even a known casting agent, just watched silently. "I got in," Jim said, his voice barely a whisper. "I thought it was some strange artistic metaphor, a weird ceremony, but it wasn't." He described Diddy asking him deeply personal questions in the bath, about his family, his fears, his boundaries. It was like an interview for a cult, testing how far I'd go. And then, Diddy allegedly gave a final instruction: "If you want the part, wash my back." Gasps were heard from the onlookers. Some press members looked visibly ill. "I did it," Jim confessed. "I scrubbed the back of a man I hardly knew because everyone around me acted like this was normal, like this was the final test for my career." He described getting out of the bath, being given a robe, and then led to another room. Inside, he found a script for The Cable Guy, champagne, and a note: "Welcome to the next level." Jim closed his eyes. "That movie changed my life," he said, "but it also destroyed something inside me. Because I knew I hadn't made it on talent alone. I made it because I submitted." The courtroom was in stunned silence. What Jim Carrey described wasn't necessarily a crime in legal terms. No physical force, no explicit threats. But it painted a picture of something equally chilling: a system of psychological manipulation. And Diddy, Carrey alleged, wasn't just part of it. He was the architect, like a puppet master. Looking at his trembling hands, Carrey said, "I traded my dignity for a role, and I've been trying to wash that feeling off ever since." The courtroom felt less like a legal proceeding and more like a confessional. And Jim Carrey seemed to carry the weight of many who had stayed silent for too long. He leaned forward, fingers shaking slightly, and said what everyone was now braced for. The parties were worse. He described his first Diddy party in 1996, before Liar Liar made him a superstar. A private invitation arrived. No address, just a driver and instructions to wear black. "I thought it was a networking event," Carrey said, "but I soon realized it was something very different." He described arriving at a Hollywood Hills mansion where the air smelled of incense and something metallic. Phones were taken at the door, and NDAs were handed out like party favors. Once you were inside, nothing felt real. He spoke of people in masks, models, athletes, directors, none using their real names, just nodding as if they were all there for a performance. The house, he said, was like a maze, with candlelit corridors, velvet drapes hiding rooms, and hypnotic music playing from unseen speakers. "I kept waiting for the business talk to start," Carrey recalled. "Instead, someone offered me a tray of pills and whispered, 'Pick your night.' He refused the pills but stayed. I was too scared to leave. I thought walking out meant I'd never work again." Then Carrey shared a detail that made the room uneasy. There were people being led into rooms, men and women. Some looked excited, others looked terrified. I asked someone what was happening, and they said, "This is the second act." He went on to describe seeing a young woman, barely 20, stumble out of a room, crying and clutching her dress. No one helped her. No one even looked. It was like everyone was conditioned to ignore suffering, as if it would break the spell. Carrey's voice dropped as he described walking into a back room and seeing a famous comedian unconscious on a sofa. Around him, 3 men in suits and 1 woman were laughing and taking pictures with the unconscious man. And at the center of it all, moving between rooms, was Diddy. He never stayed in one place for long, Jim explained. He was like a phantom host, always watching, always checking, making sure the right people were doing the wrong things. The court was utterly silent. Carrey concluded this part by saying, "It wasn't a party, it was a ceremony. And the price of admission was your conscience." But Jim Carrey wasn't finished. His hands gripped the witness box tightly. The more he revealed, the more determined he seemed to bring the truth to light, no matter how painful. "You have to understand," he told the jury. "Everything I saw, every dark secret, every deal, it all led back to Diddy. Back to..." He explained that over the years, the invitations kept coming. Different places, same disturbing setup, same rules, and often the same powerful people, or at least the same types, models, executives, rising stars. "They'd get you just before your big break," Carrey stated. "That's when you were most desperate, when you still needed them." Carrey mentioned an incident in 2001 where he brought another actor to one of these events. He didn't name him but said, "You'd recognize his face. He's in many comedies you love." This actor apparently left halfway through and never went back. Years later, Carrey said he received a message from him. "Thanks for not stopping me from leaving. I was about to lose my soul that night." Then, a more chilling claim. "There were people placed at every level," Carrey said. "They weren't just throwing parties, they were gathering information. They watched who broke the rules, who played along, and who needed a reminder that silence was safer." He named agents, producers, and even a studio executive who were regulars at Diddy's events. They were there to observe. Sometimes they left with tapes, sometimes with contracts. The deals were made at night, not in boardrooms, but in bedrooms. Carrey testified about a disturbing moment at a Diddy-hosted New York penthouse party in 2003. He saw a well-known filmmaker take a young performer into a private lounge. "I knew that kid," Jim said. "He'd just signed a record deal. He looked terrified, but no one intervened, not even me." Jim admitted he lived with immense guilt for not doing more. "I told myself this was just how the industry worked, but it's not right, and it never should have been." The courtroom felt like it was witnessing a long overdue reckoning. "I came here to say this under oath," Jim declared, "because I don't want to be part of the silence anymore. I do want to smile in interviews talking about Ace Ventura, while pretending I didn't see the darkness behind the curtain." And again, he made it clear. That darkness, he alleged, was orchestrated by Sean Combs. Some in the courtroom were visibly shaken. One juror reportedly had tears in her eyes. The judge suggested a short break, but Carrey insisted on continuing. "I want to finish," he said. "I've been quiet for too long." The prosecutor nodded. Jim took a deep breath and began to talk about the hardest part: the silence. "I didn't speak up because I thought I was crazy," he confessed. "That's what they do to you. They make you feel like you imagined it, like you misunderstood." He said if you tried to talk, you were labeled paranoid or unstable. He described years of inner turmoil, even during his biggest successes like Bruce Almighty and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. He'd be smiling on red carpets but falling apart inside. People would say, "You have it all." I'd go home and just stare at the wall knowing how I got it, and I couldn't live with it. Carrey said when he tried to confide in people, agents, therapists, friends, he was often shut down. They'd say, "That's just the way it is." Or worse, "Don't stir that up. It's dangerous." Then he described the mental toll. "I'd have nightmares about the rooms, the parties, the bathtub. I'd wake up in a cold sweat thinking I was still there." He started to believe he was the problem, that maybe he had agreed to it all. But hearing testimonies from others, like Cassie Ventura and Monique, made him realize something. "They weren't crazy, and neither was I," he stated. "We were made to feel that way. That's how the system protects itself." The courtroom hung on his every word. Carrey looked down, his voice cracking again. "I stayed silent because I was terrified. Terrified of losing everything. Terrified they'd retaliate. Terrified no one would believe me. and terrified that telling the truth would confirm the nightmare everyone wants to ignore. He paused. But I'm not afraid anymore. By this point, the courtroom was utterly captivated. All eyes were on the man who had once brought so much joy, now recounting a story of deep pain that implicated the highest levels of the entertainment industry. Jim adjusted the microphone. His hands were steady now, his voice calmer, almost chillingly so. He was about to say something he'd clearly prepared for years. "There's a list," he said. Not a written list, he clarified, but an unspoken one everyone in Hollywood knew about. The ones who always showed up to the parties, the ones who never blinked when things got dark, the ones who protected Diddy because protecting him meant protecting themselves. Then, without initially naming names, he described a pattern. You'd see the same faces, powerful directors, famous actors with clean public images who were always there when the cameras were off. They weren't just guests. They were enablers, gatekeepers. Finally, he started naming names, or at least describing them in ways that might be identifiable. Carrey claimed he saw a now Oscar-winning actor, known for playing heroic roles, at what he called backroom initiations. He alleged a major daytime talk show host was present during an incident where a young dancer passed out and was carried away, with no one calling for medical help. He also mentioned a well-known music producer who allegedly brought new talent to these parties, promising careers in exchange for their silence and compliance. But it was when Carrey focused back on Diddy that the courtroom felt a chill. Sean Combs wasn't just at the top of this list, Jim said. He made the list. These weren't just people benefiting from a corrupt system. He created the system. He chose them. He described Diddy moving through rooms, making introductions, giving subtle signals about who was safe or in. Carrey claimed these moments were like rituals, cementing trust through shared secrets and complicity. He then described a specific scene from a 2005 estate party. The upper floors were off-limits. Someone handed me a key card and said, VIP only. I went upstairs and saw a room full of masks, not for fashion, but for anonymity. And in that room were 5 individuals whose names you'd instantly recognize: directors, A-list actors, executives, and at the center of them all was Diddy. According to Carrey, these powerful figures weren't just partying. They were observing, deciding who could be trusted, who could be used. The higher you went in that house, Jim said, the lower the morals dropped. He looked directly at the jury. These weren't random events. They were orchestrated, and Diddy was the conductor. If Jim Carrey's earlier testimony was controlled, what came next was raw emotion. He paused for a long time. The silence was heavy. Then, with his eyes fixed on something far away, Carrey began to cry. "This is the part that's hardest to say," he choked out, "because it sounds unbelievable, but it's true, and I've lived with it for so long." He leaned forward, gripping the stand. You don't become famous in this town without being touched. Maybe not physically for everyone, but spiritually, emotionally, mentally. Someone has to get inside you, break something, and then rebuild you in their image. The gallery was motionless. I thought I could avoid it. Be the funny guy. Be harmless. But when it was time to move up, from comedian to leading man, I was told I had to go through their fire. And the man who lit that fire was Sean Combs. He listed the psychological wounds: panic attacks, feeling disconnected from reality, intense self-hatred. He said there were days on movie sets where he'd make everyone laugh, then go to his trailer and break down sobbing. I couldn't tell anyone, because if I did, it meant I was weak, and weak people don't last in Hollywood. Carrey then revealed he had even considered suicide. There was a moment in 2007 after the movie The Number 23 when I thought I was finished, not just with acting, but with life. If this is what success felt like, I wanted out. He described seeing an old photo online from one of Diddy's parties he didn't even know existed. In the background, he saw himself, looking drugged and dazed, next to someone he didn't remember. That's when I realized I wasn't living, I was just surviving. The prosecution didn't interrupt. There were no objections. It felt like the courtroom was witnessing a man finally releasing years of agony. Then, in a near whisper, Jim said, "They took my laughter. They took my light. And the man holding the match was right there, at every party, smiling while the rest of us burned." The courtroom was silent, not from respect, but from pure shock. Even Diddy's legal team, usually quick to object, remained still. Whatever defense they had planned, Jim Carrey had just delivered a blow that was hard to counter. He slowly regained his composure. The tears stopped, replaced by a solemn calm. "I don't want him to go to prison just for what he did to me," Carrey said, looking towards Diddy. "I want him to face consequences for what he did to all of us." He described the entertainment industry as a machine that fed on the dreams of the young, the poor, and the desperate. "You think they give you a career because you're talented? That's the lie. They give you the illusion of opportunity. Then they watch to see what you're willing to trade." He mentioned others who, he claimed, were pressured. Many had since disappeared from the spotlight. "The ones who didn't make it weren't weak," he said. "They were human." Then, one final disturbing claim. Carrey alleged that before the 2000 MTV Movie Awards, he was approached by someone from Diddy's circle with a coded invitation, a room number and a time. "I was told to show up clean, no cologne, just be vulnerable." Carrey said he didn't go. "The next day, my publicist told me I'd been dropped from a major endorsement deal. No explanation." He paused. Sean Combs doesn't need to say the words. He just makes a call. Carrey leaned in, his voice firm but quiet. "He made me do things, and I'm still paying the price." The judge asked if he had any final words. Jim looked around the room, his gaze sweeping over everyone. "To anyone watching this, anyone who thinks I'm exaggerating or delusional, I truly hope you're right. I hope I am the crazy one. Because if I'm not, then this industry is far more rotten than anyone ever dared to imagine." And with that, he stepped down. There was no applause, no outcry, just the heavy silence filled with the weight of one man's devastating truth, a truth that had, until that moment, been protected by powerful walls. As he walked out of the courtroom, reporters didn't swarm him. No one asked for a comment. They just watched him go, like someone who had weathered a storm no one else could truly see. And somewhere in that courtroom, Diddy sat in silence. Because Jim Carrey hadn't come to entertain. He came to testify. And what he allegedly said will undoubtedly echo through Hollywood for a long, long time.